Gotta love YouTube. All right, I'm back. I'm back. You gotta love YouTube. So yeah, I'm back. Um, yeah, and of course, if the camera acts crazy again, then I gotta figure out another way to do this live stream because it just turned itself off. So, welcome, Right Sound Studios. Um, like I said, I gotta come up. I think this is a 4K camera. I'm using, audio and all that's trying to live stream at the same time. And I think they're not synced. So that's why I look like I'm talking and the delay and all that. But I usually just do I usually do these live streams directly to YouTube. But I got to come up with another way to do these live streams and so forth. So, yeah, I know the ones that were watching earlier, they were, probably like, what happened? But yeah, just the camera just turned itself off and everything went black. So, anyhow, was trying to get into talking about microphones. Uh, I think it because like I said, I was trying to figure out how to fix the delay between the camera and the audio, and I even went into YouTube settings to see if I can't fix the delay and all that, and I just maybe I'm just a novice at this, and so if anyone got a way they can figure out, because this 4K camera that I got is called Formaco. And I got to figure out how to get it to sync the audio so I don't look delay in the video. And I haven't figured it out yet. But I was trying to talk about microphones and two microphones and solid state microphones and dynamic microphones and ribbon microphones and all that. And I was in the process of talking about this microphone that I think I was talking about. This it's called ProR. It's an AKG clone, and it's actually pretty well made. It's pretty solid microphone. I've already mic'd it on the guitar cabinet to see how it sounds. For this microphone to only be 70-something bucks on Amazon, I was super impressed when I saw the reviews and I got them and listened to them. I said, this is a actually really, really good sounding microphone. I'm like, for it to be a clone, it does a good job. It actually, I would say it's 95% of an AKG. It just don't have the polar pattern settings like you can do on an AKG. But most of the time we're recording in cardio anyway. So welcome back. But anyhow, welcome back, Maddie. Yeah. Welcome Secret Studios. No, I'm gonna tell you, as far as experience, and say, do I have an experience? First of all, welcome back, paratrooper. You got to execute that front or rear PLF, depending on how you're floating in the air. Am I going to execute what kind of PLF? The ground's coming on fast. I better. And then, did I turn into the wind? And this landing look like it's gonna be that's airborne stuff. But anyhow, as far as welcome DL. As far as mixing orchestra, the only thing I can tell you about, if you ever watch a live orchestra, the best sound for a live orchestra is in a big chamber type room, like a big room with really high ceilings. Something with really, really high ceilings. And so I would say, if I was going to record, let's say you did some strings, let's say you did some strings on a VST instrument, like your plug-in strings, or you use the strings from a keyboard or whatever, I would set up an auxiliary channel. And use a reverb with a chamber, maybe a hall chamber or a really tall chamber, to get the effect that strings are being recorded in that type of room. So bass player only says airborne all the way. Yeah, lead the way all the way. So I used to jump with the T10s. They got the T11s now that they jump with. Of course, that went into, they commissioned those parachutes when I came off of status years ago. Oh, someone says execute bicycle. Yeah, you talking about the that's if your shoes start to tangle, you come out and your lines are twisted up and you're trying to, sometimes bicycling works, sometimes it don't, sometimes it just you, especially in 80 seconds, you might as well just execute your reserve. Just pull your reserve because it's gonna start signal roll and the ground is coming quick. So just pull your reserve, pull your reserve, pull your reserve. So so but anyhow, so yeah, I would if you think about it, because when they're recording in the orchestra, there's a lot of microphones, but the room is what gives it the that big old echoing chamber sound. If you ever get a chance, there's a video, it's called Air Studios, where they did a video where they were recording this orchestra for a film. And if you ever listen to that, of course, that room sound makes that orchestra sound huge. But that's what I would do. I would use a couple of chamber type plug-in reverbs, if to on auxiliary channels to I would use those to give that close to effect, if that makes sense. So right sound, bounce for orchestra is the conductor, is the orchestra itself. There is right the see, let me see, bounce my mics. Hello. Oh, so gotcha. Okay. I never jumped out of plane. You guys all well, yeah, that was kind of like a quick story. Is kind of like when I was in the Army, we got this thing called AITs, which stands for Advanced Individual Training. And then after that, you go to your, a lot of people just go into their next assignment. And then a lot of times you'll go over to the airborne school. The airborne school is at Fort Benning. And I've been there lately, and they repainted the building. But in the old airborne building, used to have all these patches of all the airborne units. But anyhow, you go in there and you in process, and then they give you a barracks room assignment. You would go over to whatever company you're going to be with, and these guys wearing these hats with little airborne wings called black hats. And then you would start what they call ground week, and that's where you start learning all this stuff. But yeah, airborne school is about 3 weeks. And all you do is learn how to do what they call PLFs, parachute landing falls, how to land. And then you'll do tower week, which is the following week, and you just same thing, except you're coming out this about 34 feet up of a tower, and you come out and it's got these lines attached to these poles. And then finally, the third week is actually the jump week, where you go and you rig up and you actually jump out of the plane. You do 5 jumps and then you graduate. That's pretty much airborne school. So, airborne is just an insertion. How to insert into an area. They use airborne, started for during World War II. But airborne is just another way to get to a combat area or a training area. So, and it's the fastest way to get a whole bunch of troops in is by a parachute. So, but anyhow, moving on. Believe it or not, yeah, he's Dio's asking, that's like, how do you get a good orchestra plug-in? Believe it or not, Air Studios actually have their live room plug-in you can buy. Sunset Sound has a plug-in. Blackbird, a lot of these commercial studios are getting a plug-in that emulates that sound. But even if you don't have those plug-ins, a chamber, like a medium or a large chamber type of plugin, it still creates that effect in your reverb plugin. If you don't have your rack unit, like I use actual rack units, but I also use the plugins. Put it on chamber, and then there's some ways you can set the size of the room in the plugin, some of the diffusion, and then of course you want to your pre-delay and set some of your decay, because you don't want your decay to be really, really long, where it starts making the mix sound muddy. You want to start having those You just want to get the effect of the room without it having a long reverb tail chamber, because it can sound kind of muddy. But anyhow, so right now, I've been talking for a few minutes and the camera ain't went crazy. So so anyhow, yep. Anyhow, so let me see. Okay. Fair says, how do I feel about Fairfish 8 and a DAC with an Apollo 8? I don't know, because I don't own any Apollo or Fairfish, so I can't give an opinion on it. Don't know. I don't have any of that gear. As far as interfaces that I've ever, I used the Behringer for a while, which is actually not a bad interface, but I was also using Personas. I used the Personas Audio Box, the Personas 1818 VSL. I was using the Focusrite audio interfaces and so forth. The very first audio interface that I ever bought was I bought this interface back in 2001. And it's called the Omni, the M Audio Omni Studio. This is the very first audio interface I ever bought. Has 2 mic pre's, and on the back you have all your inserts, connections, and stuff like that. And I've had this for 2001, 24 years, and it finally crapped on me. But because I still have a PC with a lot of stuff and a lot of my older DAW stuff and all that, like Sonar Producer 7 on that, and I still got songs on that. So I ordered another one. It's in the rack. Another Omni Studio. Because believe it, that actually works really well. But the audio interfaces that I have now have the Antelope Orion, the Gen 3, which is in the rack over there. And I also have a pair of the Marker, the Unicorn. These are the 896 HDs. And I use that for my Mac. And then I got a pair of the Marker, the Unicorn, and Motu 24 AI and AOs downstairs. So those are the interfaces that I have. Okay, welcome back, Ozilla Pix. Okay. Yeah, large chamber for the strings. Hall. See, here's the thing: what can be confusing, because there's concert hall and then there's your standard hall. If you don't put on concert hall, which is like a concert, you ever been in a concert room and it's empty, you'll get that type of reflection, those reverberations, right? But a typical hall reverb is like a hallway. Like you walk, let's say you're walking down a hallway, like something that has concrete or tile floors and it doesn't have carpet, and you yell on a hallway, you can hear that hallway reverb. Hey, that's a hall reverb, that effect. But usually with orchestras, they're in tall chamber rooms, something with high ceilings, and the rooms are reflecting not only against the walls that parallel to the instruments, but also the height of the room and all that reflect, and that's what gives it that big chamber room sound. So that's why you want to use a chamber for strings more than you want to use a hall, to give it that big room sound. So let's see. Oh, okay, got it. Maddie just okay. That could be a quote. Oh, Deal says, you must have saw the video when I was playing the organ. Yeah, that video. I don't normally record myself, but when because I always tell people the one thing I'm good at out of everything that I do is I'm a musician. I am a keyboard player. I started as a trumpet player. And of course I play tuba and trumpet, and I can play sax, and all that. But I also picked up keys, piano, keyboards, organ, but I also play drums, but I also play bass. I picked up bass. I also played lead guitar. But when I was in school, I learned all the instruments, trombone, So I used to write scores, or which is the musical arrangements for songs. I did that. I learned that in high school when I started taking theory, and I also when I went to college, I went to Central State University for a short amount of time. This is before I joined the army. So, but appreciate that. Yeah, that was the rehearsal that we do every Saturday morning. And I'm on the organ, or if I'm on the keys. So yeah, I'm the main musician in my church. So appreciate that. Oh yeah, basement said my first was an audio 4 and 4. Yep. That was my first. I have 8 until Apollo, which is okay, pretty good. Yeah, I started with 8 the actual 8 machine. So that's why I have some, because that's what I started with in the 90s, working with 8 machines, that and 2-inch tape machines, but 8 so see, Secret Studios anyway. Oh, you got to run. Oh, okay, I get it. It is. So appreciate. Secret Studios pretty well. He says there is. Dio says I love the sax. Is there a great saxophone VST out there? Not as good as this real one. Not as good as this. No. It's hard to get a good. It's hard to get a good sax that really sound like authentic sax, especially on keys, because the keys, the way they trigger the sax sound, can make it. You can kind of hear, like being a sax player, I can hear a fake sax sound. So it's kind of, I can't really describe it, but it's kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to be warmed up. But it's the tone, it's hard to get that real sax tone. That's why I just play a real one. Just, now being not even, I'm not gonna, try to say, like, am I like Grover Washington Jr. or Nazi? No, I'm not on their level. Or I got a friend of mine named Kyle Turner. I ain't talked to him in years. Am I on the guys? No, but I play sax enough to get my ideas down. Just to, oh yeah, right. Sound studio. The tone, the phrasing just sounds off of. Yeah, just the phrasing is the best. That's probably the best analogy of it when you listen to even saxophone sounds on keyboards. Playing a real sax, or even because I'm a trumpet player and sax player. When I hear a trumpet sound on the keyboard, it doesn't come across like sounding like I can hear it. Maybe an untrained ear cannot hear, but the phrasing and the breath and all that, and the tone and all that, it just isn't there. So if I don't play the sax parts myself, I hire saxophone players to play sax, especially instruments like that, trumpet, sax. But I usually play the sax or trumpet parts myself, especially trying to do, horn parts like stuff like that, little horn lines like that. I'll just play them, the real instruments. I'll just record them and play them. So that's just me. I just now there are synthesized brass sounds that I use on keyboards, but those are intentional, like synth sounds. But anyhow, Max says your skills run deep, Martin. I appreciate it. I don't know about all smart, but one thing as far as me playing, because everyone knows Prince played, because I play guitar and all that, even though I'm not on Prince's level when it comes to guitar. Everyone knows my main instrument is keys. But I would consider myself like Prince, that plays all these instruments. The only difference is I was never discovered. I didn't have the luxury of getting a record deal like he did in the 70s and being on Warner Brothers. And, because Prince got a record deal when he was 16. I never got that break. So So, oh, Dio says I have to says I have to talk about Black Friday. Here's the thing with Black Fridays. Here's what I learned about sales. And I don't want to sound like a screws to sales, because sometimes there are deals that you got to take care, you got to take advantage of, like certain deals, right? There are just certain deals you just gotta, once in a while. But here's the one thing I learned about being in retail and all that, or just retails. Sales that are not sold on certain days will turn into another sale later on down the road based on how much inventory they have. So let's say they had a sale on, I'll just use this Warm Audio 47 microphone. These things normally was going for $299, right? Say the Black Friday sale says this microphone for $299, but we got a Black Friday sale, so we're selling these for $139, right? And let's say they got an inventory of 1 million of them. They sell 500,000 of them, for $139, right? But they still got another 500,000 in inventory. So what's going to happen is this Black Friday sale, because they didn't sell the other 500,000, is going to turn into Cyber Monday. And if they don't sell anything on Cyber Monday, until they get more inventory, they're just going to turn into the Christmas special, or New Year's Day sale. Or if they don't sell enough in New Year, then it just becomes President Day sale. Then it becomes, y'all get what I'm going, Valentine's, St. Patrick's. That's how these sales work. So I'm like, the same thing with software, whatever. It's like if you see a deal on some plugins for, get 5 plugins for $39. Trust me, that sale's going to come back. That's going to come back around again. It will. So let me see. All right, September. Yeah. Bryce is tricky with VST. Believe it or not, one thing I can say even with VST instruments, like I would use like Analog Lab. I have Analog Lab 5. Is one of the ones that I use as far as software plugin. But when I compare horn sounds, like horns, trumpet sounds, trombone sounds, tuba sounds, and all that, between Yamaha, Korg, and Roland, when it comes to instrument sounds, I have to give Yamaha and Korg the best credit when it comes to those sounds. When it comes to the other patches like Roland, I give Roland their credit, especially when it comes to like EP, electric piano sounds, their Fender Rhodes, their Wurlitzers, their FM sound, type of EP sounds. I got to give Roland credit on those. Grand piano sounds, my hats goes off to Yamaha for that. But strings and horns, I got to give Korg credit on that one. I know somebody out there, they may have a Nord. The problem with, Nords are great boards. The problem with Nords is they're just overpriced. If Nord, for the price that you're paying for a Nord board, in my personal opinion, you should be able to get all the functionality that you get with a Montage or a Roland Phantom EX or the Korg Kronos or whatever. You should get that same amount of functionality for the price that you're paying. I know they're trying to say, well, it's a stage board. If I'm going to a stage board where I'm just using mainly just certain, especially just pianos or whatever, I'll just get the Roland RD2000, or the Korg Grand Stage. I'm just not spending that kind of money. And as far as organ, I'm sorry, you're not getting, I don't care what keyboard it is, you can't beat a real Hammond with a real Leslie cabinet. You just can't. And some people's like, man, why don't you get a Nord for your church? No, I refuse. We got a real Hammond C3 with a real Leslie cabinet. I ain't replacing that. That sound of an organ is unbeatable. So that's my take on Black Friday deals. They're always going to be, because it's like whatever the case, These people was going crazy. You know, I remember back in the day, people would be beating each other up trying to get into Best Buy to get the latest PlayStation. Where I'm like, don't you know that PlayStation is going to be in the pawn shop in about 6 months that you're beating each other up for? That same PlayStation 5 or whatever will be in the pawn shop in 6 months or whatever. But anyhow, moving on. Says Swan Audio is rumored to be a good sax modeling program, but their VSTs are expensive. I don't own anything, so I can't. Okay, gotcha. Like I said, I just, when it comes to instruments, certain instruments, I, for the most part, if when it comes to sax, I'll just play it myself, or I will get a horn player. I'm a better saxophone player than me to play the sax part. It's just going to come out. It's going to come across the most authentic in the recording. That's just for me. Same thing like trumpet. If I need a trumpet, if I can't play it, I'll get a good trumpet player to play it. That's just me. Same thing with guitar. If I can't play guitar part, I'll find a guitar player to play it. So that's just me. Let's see. I spent too much. Yeah, that's another thing. I just don't buy plugins and stuff like that anymore because I have the ones that I've got, I don't use. Like I have a subscription with Slate, and I'm not using Slate. I'm really debating just canceling that subscription because I just don't use Slate enough to keep paying that $15 a month. I just don't. Oh, Matthew says someone in my last band had a Nord. I had no idea. Yeah, they're great boards. They're awesome. They're awesome boards. They just, you can't justify the price. To me, you just like the newest Nord Grand. It's the Stage 4. They want $6,000 for that board. And I, you know, I was in Guitar Center, and the guy was in the keyboard section, and the guy was like, "Man, you have thought about getting a new Nord?" I was like, "Nah." He's like, "Nords are awesome boards, man. They're the truth. You know, they're on fire." And I said, "Well, can I?" And I started going like this. Well, can a Nord, you know, for the price? I said, "Can a Nord? Can it sample?" He's like, "No." Does it have drum sounds in it? He's like, "No." Can it do 16-part layering? He's like, "No." Can it sequence? You know, can you do production sound? You know, make in case you have an idea you want to lay down. Can you do that? He's like, "No." I said, "Does it have an intuitive touch screen?" He's like, "No." It's like, I'm like, well then, I'm like, because the Montage can do all that. The Roland Phantom can do that. The Korg Cronus can do that. How come the Nord can't do that? Well, it's a stage board. I'm like, well, so is the, you know, I'm like, trust me, if I'm playing in a band and I'm playing sounds, if I split the board or layer the whatever, people are not going to hear the difference in sound quality in the pianos or whatever in a Yamaha Montage or Nord or any of the other boards, even the Kurzweils. You're not going to hear that. You know, whatever the case, you have to. It's almost splitting hairs when it comes to tone. When it comes down to that, it's almost like, you know, someone here playing a Fender versus a Fender, you know, American P bass, and then someone's playing let me see, a Federa bass. If they're playing the same bass lines, you're not going to hear a distinctive difference. Only a bass player might be like, well, he might hear a little bit difference in the tone. You know, they get down to, you know, the rosewood neck, and, you know, are we using whatever type of, you know, are we using round strings and all that, and, you know, the way that the bass, he might hear the tone in it, but the average listener is not going to hear. It's going to sound like if the bass, they're going to hear, that's what they're going to hear. They're not going to hear the difference between a Fender and a Federa. They just not. It's the same thing with Nord keyboards. If I play a grand piano or German grand sound on a Nord, I'll play a German grand sound on a Roland. You're not going to hear that in the mix. You're not. So I'm not paying $6,000. I'm just not. Not when I got a Roland Phantom EX downstairs. You know, well, I actually got 20 cents, but, you know, I got my, you know, or my Korg Cronus. I'm just not. So, but anyhow, that's me ranting. Um, oh man, because I always say Nords are for posing. I just like I said, it's like me. I don't own Nords. The only way you would see if you see a Nord is because someone gave it to me, or I got it for like $500. Other than that, you're gonna see the boards I got. My Kurzweil, over here. My core. Everyone knows I got a Core Cronus. I got a Core Chrome. I got a Core Trinity. Core Triton. Roland's. I got my Roland G's. My Roland XR. My Roland Phantom S. Plus I got I don't know how many VST instruments, from the Core Collection to the Synth Anthology to Analog Lab 5, all those VST, yeah. So let me see. What I see. So anyhow, going back, what I was initially talking about before I had to restart the live stream was microphones. The reason I wanted to talk about microphones, because sometimes, we hear about microphones and we always hear about microphones, but a lot of times some people don't know, when should I use a dynamic? When should I use a ribbons? When should I use a condenser tube? When should I use a condenser solid? When should I use a ribbon or whatever? That's kind of a tricky, because also the preamp that those microphones are going to go through is also going to matter, right? If I take the same, like my Rode NT2A, right? My Rode NT2A right here. If I take this microphone and run it through my Universal Audio 610 preamp behind me on my shoulder right here, or if I run it through the Joe Meek, which is above it, or I can run it through the Neve style preamps on the other side next to it, or even my Avalon. Any of those preamps are going to make this microphone sound a little different, because those preamps have their own color and whatever. So it takes a while to really say, well, and if you're using it enough on sources, then you'll start to hear, like, for example, I've listened to this on vocals, and this sounds really good on vocals, but this tube microphone sounds better on vocals. It does. But you can use this for multiple sources. I would use ribbons in a combination with dynamic microphones, especially I like to use those on guitar cabinets, but the way I place the ribbon, I don't have it directly next to the cabinet like I would have this mic'd. The screen of the cabinet with this SM58 will be closer to the cabinet, but the ribbon will probably more likely be more like 18 inches, because ribbons tend to be a little bit more mid-rangey. So, but ribbons have their character. It's the way you angle ribbon microphones. The best way I can describe ribbon microphones is to watch the Bruce Sweeting on microphone. The video's an older video, but it's an excellent video on how he uses ribbon microphones and how he angles them to get sonic character out of ribbon microphones. He's way better, because he's a Grammy Award-winning mixing engineer. He can definitely explain that video. If you want to know about ribbon microphones, watch the Bruce Sweeting. He was Michael Jackson's mixing engineer. Watch that video. Matter of fact, you watch the video on just microphones all together, you can learn a lot. That's why I learned. I watched all the programming engineers when they're talking about microphones. I watched those guys. What tube microphone is that? It's actually called the Bad Axe T11A, which Bad Axe, you can't find these anymore. This is a modified. It's got a modified upgrade K47 capsule. The tube and the output transformer and the circuits have been upgraded. So basically, these are AKG C12 clones. But this one with the mods, basically, it sounds pretty much like an AKG C12. An AKG C12 was an excellent vocal microphone. I really like this, especially on female vocals. So for everyone that was, let's say if you watch my video, I did a video on the Christmas album that's being released as we speak. I'm finishing up some of the mixing on it now, but it's being released for this month, for coming up for December. So you'll be able to hear that Christmas album that we did here. This is the microphone I use for vocals, and I use this microphone going through the Avalon preamp. This is the microphone, and that's the preamp that I used. So this is basically a C12. I got the Warm Audio 47 Junior, which is probably, I use like that on female vocals. It's a little bit, it's not as bright as that microphone. It's a little bit warmer sounding, but that really would sound, especially on a male vocal. And it's still up in the, what's your name? Over there on the mic stand. So, let me see. Oh, Dio says, how much am I able to improve the sonics of my VSTs when you run them, your outboard gear? How comparable to hardware? Like for example, I always, because I got my outputs from my analog coming through the console here, because you're running through channels, it definitely warms up the sonic character through this console. So yes, I would say for sure. For sure. Now, will the sonic character degrade, or would it be less if you were just using the instrument sounds coming out of your VST directed to the output and you just did everything in the box? It'll still sound good. But when you run through the console, especially if you know, like kick, which I use a VST drum, like for example, the Moto drums by IK Media, which, you know, the drum sets, and I come out of the channels and I still put it through like compressors like my 76 and so forth. Yes, that for sure sounds sonically better, for sure. Same thing with bass sounds, you know, like ample bass, VST and stuff like that, for sure. Let me see what else. Oh, Bryce says the C12 is, it's the reason why I researched it, because I was researching for C12 clones, because actual AKG C12s are expensive. So I came across the Bad Axe T11As, and you could buy, I was able to buy those off of Amazon for about $200. But then of course, naturally, microphoneparts.com has upgrade kits. You buy the upgrade kit, it's about $400 upgrade kit, and it basically turned that T11 into a $20,000 AKG C12. That's basically what it did. Dia says AKG for 27,000. Yeah, that's about right. There's more, but they were averaging about 20 grand when I was researching it, but that's about right. They're pretty much up there, along with the an actual Telefunken Elon 251, which is a $20,000 microphone. And any of those microphones, so microphoneparts.com actually has upgrades for your, let's say you get MXL microphones. If you buy the upgrade kits, your microphones, you're basically making your cheaper microphones closer to the pro sounding microphones by upgrading. So if you're not aware of microphoneparts.com, even when I upgraded this is an MXL. I use this for when I do this live stream mic. This MXL 2006 model. I use this, but I upgraded it with better capacitors, made it sound a lot better. Oh yeah, Dio says he just got the Total Studio. Yeah, I've had that for a while. Yeah, that Total, you can't beat that. Because I'm a big IK Multimedia, like T-Rax and all their products, their software. I'm a big fan of IK Multimedia. But Maddie too said, I found for me, even though I've sung through all expensive micros in other studios, I prefer dynamic microphones at home. Dynamic, believe it or not, you can record really well with dynamic microphones, whether it's the SM57, SM58, or even the SM7. That's a really, really popular dynamic microphone. Sennheiser makes great dynamic microphones. Really, the reason why, like, I'll go back to condenser microphones. Most of the time, you think about dynamic microphones, pretty much a self-contained cardio type of microphone was recording things in front of it, not behind it or to the side. It's pretty much recording in front of it. Usually dynamic microphones, you got to push them harder because of the volume. But the great thing about the reason why engineers would want condenser microphones that have polar patterns, because let's say for ourselves, for example, not only do I might want to record the source in front of me, I might want to capture things behind the ambience or whatever in behind, for example. So they'll set it to figure of 8, or they'll set it in all pattern direction to capture not only the source but the room that it's in. That's what they're trying to do, that to get a certain capture a certain image. So a lot of times the rooms and the bigger sounds and the ambience of the room tends to make things sound bigger in the mix, and controlled, if that makes sense. So let me see. Right sounds, yes, it's a caps. Yeah, they do. They do. They make a difference. This is the reason why, let's say, for example, in the big commercial studios, and the channels are modulars, which means the channels can come out. And the biggest number one failure in electronics are capacitors. So that's why you probably heard this term recapping or resoldering old, worn out capacitors, because capacitors are they're like signal and electronic filtering. Well, electrolytic capacitors fail. And if they fail, for example, you might find on your high end, you might have high, mid, low, and low. And you're like, well, my high end on that channel it's probably because the caps they didn't fail. So a lot of times they'll pull that cap out and recap the board to bring the life back to the channel. This is done in all electron, not just on the console, in your actual outboard gear. Same thing. You want to recap. Same thing with the caps for your power supply, because they basically stabilize the power. So caps are huge. I guarantee if you ever had a piece of electronic and it wasn't working, I don't care. It can be a car amp for your car. I guarantee 90% of the time, the capacitor has failed. So if you are pretty wizzy with a soldering iron, you can go get the same rated capacitor. So a lot of them are polarity set. Desolder that old put the old capacitor out, resolder the new capacitor, and boom, you'll be amazed. Oh, it came back on. Yep. So Deal says, are you having to solder those parts in your microphone, the capacitors? Yes, I do. It takes a minute. It takes a minute. For example, let me see if I open my Rode. Let me. I hadn't had to solder because Rode makes really good, high quality, microphones. But I'll use an example. I'll pull this off. Oh, you can't see it on this one. Let me break out the warm audio one. No, here we go. I'll show you this in this T11. So right here on this microphone right here, there is some screws. There are some screws. So you got to undo the screws. There's some screws here. Once you undo all these screws, like these you can see there's 4 screws here, and then there are 4 screws there. You undo that, and this transformer comes off. There's a tube in there. Of course, those are what's holding that on is the screws here. But once you take all this out, there's 2 circuit boards. And you can see here, once you see the circuit board, you undo the circuit board, there are capacitors that you're going to solder. And they're polarity rated. So you got positive goes to positive, negative to negative. So you just undo the old capacitor, which was this green one right here was really, really small. But this is a way bigger capacitor. So what once you take all these old out and you just solder a new one in and put it back together, and that's it. It can take up to a couple hours to do it, but that's all you really have to do. And you'll be amazed once you do that and you upgrade that along with the cap, because it's just a couple of wires going to this capsule right up there. You will be amazed how big of a difference in the sound quality microphone going from A to B by upgrading your electronics in your microphone. It's like night and day. So if you got some microphones, some let's say you got some MXO microphones or some, some like the AT2020 microphone by Audio Technica. Let's say you got one of them, because those are like a dime a dozen. Go to microphoneparts.com and get the AT2020 upgrade kit and upgrade, and you'll be amazed the difference in that microphone after you modify it. If you follow the directions, it tells you capacitor one goes right here. It'll say C1 on the board or whatever. It'll just follow it to a T, and you can't mess it up. If you follow the instructions to a T, you can't mess it up. So let's see. Let me see what else. Gotcha. Okay, yeah. Just I forgot about Roswell. So, welcome, Legacy Shredder. I just saw you popped in. So, yeah. So that's with microphones. Like I said, and you can have one microphone, and now the thing is with microphones. Every microphone isn't always the best to use. That's why you want to have a variety of microphones. And some sources like, okay, you want to use a dynamic mic on a guitar cabinet as an example. It might not be working. You're like, well, no, let me switch to that 47, see how it sounds. And then sometimes you can look at the specs. Let's say this microphone's a little too bright or whatever. And then on top of that, sometimes it's just the way you place the microphone can make a difference in the way it sounds. Instead of 4 inches, I might want to move it 6 inches. Maybe move it not only 6 inches, a little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, angle it a little bit. It's not it's not uncommon for let's say I got two of these, but I might have one set here, and then I might have another one turned this way. Or let's say I have a pair of, microphones angled at a certain direction to capture. So you got to move the microphones around. I mean, that's what Al Schmidt did. He just adjusted the microphones, and sometimes let me just adjust a little bit here, a little bit there, and you'll be amazed that sometimes that's enough. And then of course, like I said, depending on what preamp you're going to run through. Like for example, if you have an API or even a Neve style preamp for recording your sources, you really can't go wrong with those two types of microphones. API tend to be a little hotter, but Neve tend to be a little bit more fatter, warmer sounding. But if I was going to record a Neve style preamp and a really good microphone, and you can't really go wrong when you're trying to record your sources. There's probably, so many microphones companies out there. I mean, you got Blue, there's Sawyer's, there's MXL, there's Telefunken, there's Newman, there's Biodynamics, there's Sennheiser, there's MXL, there's Warm Audio. Just the list just ridiculous. And the same thing, there's so many preamp companies out there. So oh yeah, Wright says here that he nailed it. So the microphone parts, yep. Oh, you're right. Says Bruce and Al were huge with that. I mean, if you think about it, we're talking about, Bruce and Al were really good friends. I mean, both of them, engineered some of the. I mean, Bruce Sweeting, Michael Jackson, Barbra Streisand, Queen. The list is huge because he worked at Westlake. Al Schmidt, Capitol Studios. I mean, you think of all the major artists that came out of Capitol Studios. I mean, the list is huge. Al's engineered some of the biggest artists out there. Rest in peace, Al and Bruce, because both of them have the legends that's they got their wings. Whenever I like I said, I watched Bruce Sweeting microphone techniques videos. You can't, that's how I learn. I sit there and I've listened to all ones. If Andrew Sheps has, if he's giving some advice, I'm listening. Dave Pensado, if he's giving advice, I'm listening. Mixing, especially like Chris Loralzi, if he's giving mixing advice, I'm listening. Sylvia Massey, she's got her techniques, I'm listening. Manny American, I'm listening. Greg Wells, I'm listening. Joshua Jason, I'm listening. And the list just goes on and on and on. Joe Ciccarelli, he's one of Sunset Sound major, chief engineers. I'm listening. If he's saying, speaker placement, whatever, I'm listening. Anywhere advice, anybody that's been in the game, that's been around the pro, I'm listening. That's the best way I can listen. So if they got videos on drumming techniques, even with Warren Hewitt, produced like a pro, done some drum miking, I'm listening. I'm listening to I'm even listening to Joe Correll when he does his drumming, because he's a drummer. He's a drummer. I'm listening to him, hey. So what else? I watch any of those, even if I would say all the big people, all the big heavy hitters, they got videos out there. I try to watch them, to see what I can learn from it. So let's see. Bright Studio says Blue is dead, acquired by Logitech. Oh, okay. Yeah, because it's when you got 150 microphone companies, the competition is, I can believe that. Craig Ritter says, what hardware is more important to getting a good vocal if everything is going to be done in the box? Preamp, compressor, EQ. I would say, this is just my opinion and my experience. The preamp and the microphone, out of all of it, if you're going to do, you're going to record into your DAW, going into your interface, I would say some people say that they get away with their preamp in their interface, but I can't find anything that can beat the sound of a really good preamp compared to the preamp in the interface. It just, I don't see it. When it comes to hardware, you can probably get away with maybe a compressor, a plug-in. EQs are definitely works with plugins, and reverb and delays with plugins, but the preamps, those are hard to beat. Those are really hard to beat. The preamps is probably one of the key key ingredients in the good recordings is that preamp and your microphone. So Matthew says a good room. And yeah, it depends on what you're recording in that room too. Like I said, I would say a preamp, but some would say definitely a compressor. Yeah, if you got a good chain, a good vocal, like if you say, for example, if I wanted a really good, let's say I want to create a vocal chain. I usually use my Avalon because it does have a compressor. I don't use the compressor a whole lot, or the EQ on it a lot, but I use it for the sound character of my Avalon. But if, let's say, I was going to use my Neve style preamp over here, that's going to be the mic is going to go. For example, I would use this is bad, like I said, basically my C12 clone, AKG C12 clone, will go into that. Will then go into that Neve style preamp. Then that would go into in the rack over here, my Lindale Audio 76, which is which is basically a Universal Audio 76. That would then come into the interface to go into the DAW. That would be my vocal chain. I recently am looking to pick up, because tube techs are expensive, but I want to try to see how good the Warm Audio tube tech CLB1, I believe it's CL1B or something like that, compressor is. I really want to see that, because that was, with a tube tech going from a Neve 73 into a tube tech was a very common vocal chain, especially in the R&B world. But some people go directly into 1176. Some people go into an LA2A type compressor. So it's really dependent. But all that can really make the vocal sound going to sound pretty good, going into your DAW, whether you use Logic, Pro Tools, Studio One, whatever the case, versus trying to just go in with a microphone directly into your interface's preamp. You're probably not going to get the warmth and color. So let's see. Oh yes, like you said, give me a Neve 73 and I can do. Okay, yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, I like, to me, even if you don't have a Neve 73, I think any preamp, not all preamps, but most preamps, especially in a good stereo unit, is going to definitely, you can hear it. Even like the ARP vocal channel would be ahead of just using an interface preamp. Matches up in a good room. Yeah, and like I said, with the room, it really depends on what you're recording. If you're, because sometimes when we think about music and all that, we tend to think that everyone's recording a certain genre of music, and they're not. Like if you're doing hip hop, the room doesn't matter. What matters is like the drum sound, drum samples, and or whatever. And as long as you got vocals that you can hear, that they're not. Hip hop doesn't really require to have all these sonic characters like you would if you were recording a band or whatever, as an example. So let's see. Chris said, I have a TLM103, the Newman TLM103, going into an Audient ID4, and ranks for a good preamp that works well with the TLM. Like I say, with that TLM103, if you don't have a preamp, there are a lot of preamp clones that you can buy, like the Heritage Audio. I have a Heritage Audio. I have the Altrons over there. The Warm Audio, there's Ventec Audio, there's a lot of Neve 1073 clones out there. Even Behringer has the 73 clone now. Anything like that, and run that microphone through a preamp like that, then into your interface, and you will hear difference. You would definitely hear a difference over just running it to the Audient. let's see, right, says, let's see, I have a tube, I can hear the dog down the street. The neighbors upstairs on the highway, 1,000 yeah, that's tubes, condensers are definitely running through a preamp are definitely sensitive, so that's why, but that's the whole point of it, is so you could capture the room and all that too. But they just, with a good condenser mic, it's the art of the sound of it, the sonic of it. So like I said, a good clone, but yeah, that's like I said, the Heritage Audio, I got a Heritage Audio down, I got the quite a few, well, I don't have a whole bunch of them, but I got about 4 of them. Neve style preamps. They're just, because it's the transformers in them, the input and output transformers in them, that just gives them this, so let's see. Yeah, basically just sums it up. He said 9 times out of 10 it's going to beat the interface. It will. It just it just will. But yeah, imagine tubes and transformers. It just, having a class A circuit, good tube transformer, good op amp. The op amps like Bird Brown or 990 op amps or any of those type of op amps in your circuit with high quality capacitors, going input and output transformers with tube, all that stuff is just, let me tell you, I learned that a long time ago listening to, it's the electronics. It's the same thing. Can you imagine even with your microphone, and it's like if you listen to a tube microphone versus a non-tubeless microphone without the transformer, even that microphone doesn't have enough harmonics in it because there's no transformer in it. But that transformer gives it harmonics. That's what we call that depth and warmth that you're looking for. That tube microphone. That's why I got a few of them. Tube microphones. Let's see. Welcome, coffee on Caribbean. If I'm saying that right. And the folks right in the face, just noob with everything. Oh, gotcha. Okay. I'm such a noob with everything. Okay. Focusrite intake. I think using Ardo, which is software, the Ardo software and the Focusrite intake interface. It could be a Focusrite 2i2, maybe the 18i20 Focusrite or whatever the case. But like once again, I had Focusrite interfaces, and they just, that's why I started buying all the hardware that I started buying, because I wasn't getting it with just, the interface alone. It just wasn't there. Matt says, except you, Mark, you have enough. That's just me, because I got a gas problem, gear acquisition. That's just me. As long as I can afford the gear, I'm going to continue to buy it. That's just me. So she says, I had a Focusrite Solo, but apparently Focusrite has a reputation of being slightly harder to get right in the mix. So I bought an Audient. Gotcha. Okay. Never had an Audient. I've had the M Audio, but I've never had an Audient interface. But one thing is just, you think about it when it comes to preamps, you got interface of preamps. And I know there was Graham of the Recording Revolution. You said all you need is just your preamp. That's not true. You can use just your preamp. And I'm like, if you think about it, if that was the case, all your big studios wouldn't have any preamps. Because even the consoles, like the Neve consoles and all that, or an SSL or whatever, they have the preamp. They know better. So I'm just telling you, I'm telling you. Even though you have an interface, get yourself a nice external preamp. Get you a nice, so let's see. Oh, Legacy says, have you been watching Andrew Chapman? Have you? Oh, gotcha. Oh yeah, I've seen Andrew Chapman. I've seen his video. He did a preamp tier list. And here's the thing. Because one, he was sometimes these guys can be biased. I saw another preamp tier list from another guy, and he was trying to say, like, for example, I have two of the Art Pro MPA2s. And he was trying to say your preamp in your interface is better than those Art Pro MPAs. And I can tell you, I've recorded using those Art Pro MPAs, and no, your interface is not. Your interface preamp will not sound as good as those Arts. They will not. Those Arts are going to sound way better. Period. So that's why I don't listen to tier list videos, because those are usually biased videos. That's just their opinion. Because it's no different than, I've watched even the pro commercial studios, and I'll watch one where the guy would have let's say he had a Triton Legacy console, like an 80B Triton 80B. And when you go into the studio, he'll say, yeah, people come to my studio, they travel around the world to come to my studio because of this Triton 80B. The sound is legendary. It's the best sounding console, and I'm talking about Cherokee Studios, right? This Triton console. But then if you watch the video with Sunset Sound, they basically have API Frankenstein style consoles, which basically have API preamps and stuff like that in them. So I'm like, well, Cherokee says the Triton is better, right? And then you go over there and they'll say, well, no, they'll say the Sunset Sound, and all the client says that sounds fat, And then of course you go to another studio, let's say the Record Plant, for example, was known to have Neve consoles in it. Now they got an SSL in there, but they were known to have Neve consoles. Or if you go to East West, they were known to have a Neve console in there. I'm like, well, then, according to Cherokee Studios, the Triton is the best thing, or whatever. Right. And then so it gets into, and actually, for the most part, those consoles are probably 95% within the same sonic character quality of each other. The API versus the SSL versus the Neve versus, you go to the studio Triton, or this studio's got a Audient console. This studio's got an Helios. This studio's got a Harrison, and so forth. So, yeah. So that's why I'm kind of weary of tier, because that's why I don't make them. So, let's see. Moving on. You said Audient has console yeah, I mean the console. I'm reading what Tactical Committee says. The console does. The Audient console definitely has preamps in it. I've heard it. It sounds good. So Elijah Footer 8883, welcome. Says, I got my first DAW on audio interface, and I'm wondering if I should get the classic SM57 or something different. I would get an SM57, and I would also not or and something different. Like, for example, depending on what your budget is, you can get a Rode NT1 for a couple $100. I would use the SM57 if you're going to record some instruments like a guitar cabinet. And then I would get at least a decent condenser microphone if you want to record vocals and things like that. So it really depends on your budget. So it, Alexis, all you guys know is I use Neve console and Neve preamps. I never say APR or SS. Oh yeah, I don't think. Well, in of course, of course, anyone that would try to sit there and say SSL is bad, whatever would be, because think about the mixing console that Bob Clear Mountain and Crystal Algae. Crystal Algae is mixing on an SSL. And we know Crystal Algae mixes don't sound bad at all. So it's definitely, whatever case. Or I've listened to recordings like with Joe Carell, and they're recording, he's the studio there is Treasure Isle, and they have a Trident console. And the mixing with Joe Carell is outstanding. And that's a Trident console. So it's really, the names really isn't really about the names. It's really about the engineer and the tools you're using. And all of those tools can sound good. If you know what you're doing, they'll sound good. Oh yeah, so he said for AT 2020, if you're trying to stay cheap, SM is good all around. But like I said, I would use SM57 for doing instruments. And AT20 is a good start. And if you really go to microphoneparts.com and get the AT 2020 mic upgrade, you'll be blown away with that AT 2020 microphone. So I'm trying to record mainly rock. And like I said, if you're going to record for like guitar and all that, if it's SM57 is a good microphone for drums and instrument cap, like guitar amps and stuff like that. They're great. So let's see. Oh, Rice downstairs. A lot of those studios from yesterday, those consoles are modified to try to complete. Well, that is true. That is one thing that isn't told. A lot of consoles do. They'll have certain guys come in there and they'll like an SSL. You let's say it's an SSL for 6,000 console, and they'll go another guy come in there and he'll upgrade from. He might have let's say some 2016 op amps, and they'll change it to the 990 op amps in that SSL. And then they're like, man, your console has a little bit, that SSL 6000 has a little bit more headroom. Why is that? Well, that's because he's put 990 op amps in it. So they do that. So let's see. Moving on. No. Okay. Oh yeah, he's talking about with that's going back. Maddie just made a good comment about really, believe it or not, when it comes, what separates the higher quality gear versus cheap gear, because cheap gear is using cheaper electronics, which tend to make things tend to be a lot more crispy, brighty, more bright and crispy and brittle sounding, especially on the top end. They don't have enough mid and low end warmth and fatness, and the high end, it doesn't have that nice, sweet high end. That's usually the difference. And it's kind of like if you open up one microphone with well, let me see. I got a two MXL 990 microphones. One is modified and one isn't. And believe it or not, these capacitors that I upgraded changed the color and made the microphone sound warmer. I'm gonna grab them right quick. And I'm gonna open them so you can see the difference. Let me grab them. Okay, and that's gonna wrap. I'll end it and I'll wrap it up with this right quick. Okay, I got two MXL microphones. One's modified, the other one isn't. So okay, I don't know if we better see this well. I'm gonna try to see if the camera was gonna pick up the difference. You may or you may not be able to see this. Let's see if you can see the difference. You may or may not. Okay, in this one, I'm gonna try to show you. If you look closely, see these little tiny yellow capacitors in there. Those are your little capacitors. That's how the microphone comes stock when you buy this MXL 90. I don't know if you can see a really good angle because I have to take it completely apart. So what I've done, on this one, if you look closely, see the white capacitors inside here? If you look closely, it was 4 capacitors that you upgrade in this one. And that was the difference in what made this microphone. So this one, when I did that and I plugged it up, I was like, oh, you could hear this microphone had a lot more tone and quality to it just by changing that one little mod like that. And when I started doing that, was the first thing. This is the first microphone I modded. I became sold on modifications, especially on cheap gear. Now, of course, expensive microphones, you don't have to do that. But if you want your cheap microphones like this MXLs to compete with expensive, you have to do that. If you want them to sound just as good. So that's just some food for thought. Let's see what else. Well, like I said, he's going back with AT20. No matter how like I said, if you use the same electronics, the AT2020 mod that they have for microphoneparts.com is basically turning your AT2020 into a Neumann TLM 104. Is what it's supposed to do. Including the capsule upgrade. Because the capsule's half of the sound is a mic capsule. Let's see. What is Maddie says, what is my favorite vocal chain that I own? Believe it or not, I'll run my microphone. My favorite thing is my Avalon 737 for vocals. And then I'll run that to my Lens 76 compressor. Then that goes into my interface, my Antelope interface, which then goes into the DAW. That's my vocal chain. It's also, you know what, the 737 is also Joe Correll's favorite vocal. He also loves the Avalon 737 for vocals. So, but I also use vocals on my Tone Beast, which sounds really, really good. But you know, the Warm Audio Tone Beast is basically an API clone. But I also tried vocals with the 73s, which sounds really, really good. So, excuse me, it really, really depends. Like, I'm about to record the sax part on this track tonight. My tenor sax, I'm going to run through my 73 and my Lin 76 compressor to record the sax part on this. I'm about to do that once I get off this live stream. So that's my favorite vocal chain, is the Avalon 737. That's just, you know, it's just what it is. Rice says no 16 on sax. I haven't used my 16 yet. I've listened to it, and I've listened to it through different sources, but I'm waiting to do the tube upgrade. That still has the stock. Tubes in it. Now I have a friend of mine that has a recording studio, and he's basically does nothing but most of his stuff is country stuff. He is a big Universal Audio 16 user, and I've listened to his records. They sound really, really good. He uses the Mic Tech mics with the 610 Universal 610. It was one of the reasons why I bought one, because he's got one, and I've listened to his stuff, but I haven't tried it to record any source yet. So that's the reason why I'm going to wait before I start using it. There is a tube upgrade for that to give that 610 some more headroom and some, to make it sound, So that's what I'm gonna do, is I'm just gonna upgrade. Then I'll start using that 610, because I've heard it on vocals in a lot of sources. But right now, like I said, my big thing is those Neve style preamps. They're hard to beat. That's why they're such a sought after preamp. They're that good. Let's see. So let me see. Yep. Okay. So anyhow, that's what I wanted to talk about tonight's live stream. We'll just talk about microphones and preamps. If I was to say anything that anyone, if you're not using if you're just doing where you're recording, let's say, I don't care what interface you got. I don't care if you got an Audient, even if you got an Apollo Twin. I would say, if you want your stuff to sound, you want to take it to the next. Think about it like this. If you ever get a chance, if you haven't been to a pro level commercial studio, just YouTube a pro level recording studio, right? Just think about that for a second. The console, let's say you go in there and they have a Neve VR88 console. They got a rack full of API and Neve style preamps and stuff like that. Think about that for a second. And let's say they're going to have the usual ubiquitous microphones, 67s, 41s, Newman U87, stuff like that. Think about that for a second. And think about that recording like East West or United or any of those big studios, Blackbird, whatever. Think about it. Why do those studios, when they record, why do those records sound so big and huge? Well, there you have it. So that's going to do it for this live stream. I really appreciate everyone. I really appreciate everyone coming in. I got to get back to I got to get back into finish these tracks. I got to record the sax part so I can get this record mixed and move on, because I'm trying to get this thing released. And the one record I got to do is I got to still have sax. So I want to wrap it up. I just want to talk about microphones and preamps. Next week, because I was going to talk about microphones, and then next week I was going to talk about preamps. Next week I want to talk about equalizers and compressors. So that's what I want to talk about, because equalizers and compressors are the most misused tool, and equalization and compression are the make and break gear, whether it's a piece of gear or a plug-in. It's the make and break of anything that sounds good, is the compressor and the EQ out of everything. So that's what I want to talk about next week: equalizers and compressors. So that's going to do it for this live stream, and hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I got some sweet potato pie I need to finish up, and we're going to see y'all next time I do this live stream. And thank goodness the camera didn't act stupid. So other than that, I appreciate everyone, and we'll see you next time. And also, like I said, I'm still going to work on this delay thing, because that's just killing me. So that's going to do it. Sorry, Jazzy man. I mean, you get, no, it does not. It's not going to sound like a Newman U87. It's got its own sound, but I'll put it like this. If you ever have I'll just say this really quick. If you ever had a Marshall MXO 990, and you know what it sounds like when you modify it, it just sounds better. That's the best way I can describe it. I can't compare it to any other top-notch microphone, but it definitely sounds better than when it wasn't. So I'll leave it at that. Once again, we'll see y'all next time, and we hope everyone have happy holidays, and I hope y'all bought some great gear, especially some Black Friday stuff. Hope y'all got some good deals for y'all recording studios. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Y'all have a great one.